Hey guys, so I'm just setting myself up here to make a video about firearms in my bedroom in Australia, a place that's so pro-gun. So I'll just take this plastic magazine out of this really terrible holster and put it in this toy gun. I'll then take this black string, which I'm improvising as a sling, a two-pointed setup here, and just pull that over my shoulder. And some other people also were trying to tell me that this wasn't an MP5 modeled gun. You guys, you're funny. I mean, I know an MP5 when I see one, just like how I know that this here is a Glock revolver. I mean, you can't fool me, man, I know. So, now that I've established that I'm completely professional, let's get on with the video. Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of Assault Rifles and Submachine Guns for Center Axis Relock. So, I'm kind of just going to be jumping around the place here and answering random questions that other people have asked me either online or in person, and other stuff I was going to talk about anyway that I think is pretty relevant to the car system. Some of these things I'll be mentioning in the video are unique to the car system. Others are pretty universal, but I also think very necessary to learn when performing any of these techniques, or, you know, if you want to learn car. So, first and foremost, slings. Now, I didn't mention slings at all in the first video, but regardless if it's an assault rifle, a submachine gun, shotgun, if it's a gun that requires like 2 hands to use properly, then I think you should definitely have a sling on it. They're good for a few reasons. One, if you're struggling with someone else at close range and they're trying to get the gun off you, it makes it so much harder for them. Not impossible, but much more difficult. And I, would rather have that on my side than not. The other thing is that if you're marching long distances, one thing that I say about slings is that if you hiked it, you should have put a sling on it. Anyway, anyone that's marched long distances will carry any kind of gun. It doesn't matter if it's a light one or a heavy one. If they have a sling on it, it makes those long walks far easier. So when needing to put the gun on and get the sling over you quickly, here's how it's done. Now first of all, most people are right-handed, such as myself, so grip the gun in your right hand, take the sling like so. What I like to do is just put it between my thumb and my other fingers, and grip it from back to where the stock is. Then all I need to do from here is pull it over my head, and that's it. And the sling should be underneath my left side shoulder, assuming you're right-handed. And yes, if it's the other way around, then the sling will be under the right side shoulder. Some people like to have the reverse setup with this. I don't know why, but it is far better to have it this way. So at this point I've got the 2 pointed sling set up, and here's the thing. If I need to transition to my pistol, I'm just going to let the gun go for now. Okay, see, it kind of automatically wants to go to this side. So if I have the gun set up on the other side shoulder, meaning that the gun's in my right hand, the sling's going under the right side shoulder, if I let it go, it'll tend to move this way. And the problem with that is that if I need to drop it and then quickly draw the pistol, I don't want it crossing over this side. It'll kind of get caught up a little bit. And so now if I assist this weapon to be moved over this side, see, now I can draw the pistol. And understand something too, every time I'm trying to put this pistol back, I'm trying to do it without looking at it, but here's the thing. All the gear I'm using right now is stuff that I can legally possess in Australia, so none of this is the stuff I would actually use if I was working in some other country where I can use better equipment. So, shitty model gun, shitty holster, and also I'm using my outside, everyday kind of attire. When I leave the house, I'll wear these crappy pants. These aren't the tactical pants, and this is certainly not a tactical shirt. This is like a $5 shitty fucking black t-shirt, and so everything's kind of getting caught up here. So, right now I'm going to be looking down at it just to make sure I place it back in properly, but that's not good practice, okay? So, I understand I'm doing something incorrectly here, but I'm pointing that out. So, yes, don't look down when doing this. Like, keep your eye out and just sort of like use the tactile sensitivity to put the pistol back in. Okay, so a couple of people have asked me, what's the importance of having this arm in line with the gun when I'm in the combat position here? Well, here's the thing. When this arm is out like this in line with it, and it doesn't matter if it's a little bit here or a little bit out this way, preferably it's better to have it closer in than out, but just as long as this elbow is not touching the rib cage. This is when you're in the combat position where the gun would be angled. If you're in the apogee position, well, it's a different story. So we'll talk about the combat position. Now, as I stated, the stock should be just underneath that collarbone in the little meaty area. So, and you can try this too, when you move your arm out like this, it kind of opens up these muscles in here and creates somewhat of a little pocket. And that's what I want to have the stock wedged up into. But when I bring my arm closer into me like this, it tightens all those muscles and sort of pushes them forward slightly. So the issue with that is that if I'm here firing the gun, and sorry if I'm doing it incorrectly, it's such a forced habit for me to do it like that. So if my elbow is into my rib cage here and I'm doing this incorrectly, because now it's pushed more of the muscle forward and there's no longer a pocket, that recoil has a tendency and potential to have the gun move off the shoulder this way. So that's why I like to eliminate that risk by having the arm out like so in line with the gun. So now, like I said, it kind of like forms a groove and it fits in there really well. Okay, let's talk about shoulder transitions. Now in just about every other system of shooting, this is just called the normal way of holding a rifle or a two-handed gun of some sort. Whereas in car we call this the apogee position, and again, as I stated in the first video, it's for when you're taking out targets that are further than 30 feet away and up to including the distance that whatever gun you have is going to be effective at. So maybe that's 50 feet, maybe it's 100, you should know your gun. So anyway, when people in the normal position, what they call a normal position, but basically they're holding the gun like this. If it's in the right hand, they'll close the left eye and look down the sights with the right eye, and then if they need to make that shoulder transition with the sling on, they simply bring it across like so, then they'll switch eyes. The advantage in car is that if I have it, we'll start with the combat position. If I have it here in the combat position, whereas I mentioned in the first video, you keep both eyes open and you're just sort of like looking over the sights. Now, the reason why people would generally need to swap shoulders is if they had to shoot around, like cover, or at least enhanced concealment, so something like a wooden door or whatever, but basically something that you cannot see through but bullets will still go through. Or cover is something that you can't see through but will stop the path of a bullet, unless for whatever reason there's randomly placed super efficient thick bulletproof glass there, so you can see through that but you can't shoot through it. So anyway, so my point is that if you can imagine there's like a really big concrete made joist or something holding like, if say I'm in an underground car park or whatever, like they're loaded with those things. So if I'm here and I need to shoot around that, I'll get more of an angle around there if I swap shoulder sides like this. But the beauty is that in car I don't need to go to the opposite angle here. I can still keep it at the same angle, keep it underneath the collarbone of mine, and then shoot around this way here. So if you can look at, see the little shadow behind me, like directly above my my index finger right now. So here's where my angle's at now if I've got it on the right hand side. So if I swap over here, I've just covered a lot more distance. And if the target is about 30 or more feet away, then if I wanted to, I can use the cheek weld fucking technique. So I'll aim it at the camera right now, where I'll close my right eye and I'll still look down the sights with my left eye. The good thing about doing this is that typically if I'm over in this position here, the dominant eye people will tend to be using, if it's in the right hand side, will be their left eye. Because a lot of the times as well you'll be angled off this way where the left hand eye will be closest to where the targets are. So if I need to swap shoulders like this, well, that's the quickest eye for me to line up down the sights, if need be. But typically most of the situations I'll probably just be here and then moving across like that. Okay, now if you need to remove the sling from this, all you have to do is take the stock and move it over the shoulder like that. Typically this is something that people would want to do if they're going to be sitting here for longer periods of time or something like that, and so if they would need to make a full transition. So a half transition, at least is what I call it, is just by moving it to the other side. A full transition is where you need to swap your hands to mirror that. And so the way that I prefer doing this is just by coming over here and grabbing the handle and swapping that way. The reason I prefer doing this is that I always have a trigger finger near the trigger. Now I understand that some people can't do this because they're either not so physically strong, or maybe they have a really heavy gun, combination of both of these things. So there's a couple of other ways that people can make this transition. So after you remove the sling, I still bring the stock to the opposite shoulder, and something they can do is they'll bring the hand down to where the magazine is. They'll then take this hand, bring it over to here, then this one down to the handle. Another way that people can do this if they wanted to is they can just grab over here and then here, so it's less movements to think about. So this is the one that I would prefer people to do because it's less movements, and while you're grabbing here, pull it into you. Okay, if the gun seems to be dipping down, you'll figure that out pretty quickly. So anyway, that's the way that's performed. But me, I prefer them because I am strong enough to be able to do this, even if it's like a really heavy gun like an AK with like optics and all this other kind of stuff weighing it down, I can still do this no problem. You just need to make sure that when you grab it here, you're still pulling it into your shoulder. But again, I understand that I'm not everyone, and some other people out there aren't as physically strong as other people. So if that is you, rather than having the gun dip down anyway when trying to go from the handle first, well, it probably will be faster for you to go to here and then swap to here. Alright, let's discuss reloads. Something to consider when performing a reload, if there's a sling on the gun, regardless of what type it is, 1 point, 2 point, so on, is that if you have a wristwatch on, or anything else that you would wear around your wrist or the arm in general, there is a potential that it can get caught and snagged in the sling, so be mindful of that. And if you drill this thing a couple of times in your regular setup, say you've got whatever type of wristwatch on, and it gets caught up in the type of sling that you have when performing the reloads the way that you perform them, or the way that I'm about to show you in this video, then either ditch the wristwatch or get a different type of setup. Anyway, you'll figure it out. So here's the one thing I will mention when performing a reload. So as I grab the spare magazine and then I take this other one out, whatever way I showed you, you can use the thumb, you can use the magazine itself. If it's an AR-15, M16, any of the kind of guns from that family, or guns made by other companies that have the same setup when it comes to ejecting the magazine, hit the magic button here to have the magazine fall out, then put the other one in. If it's jammed for whatever reason, then while this one's in your hand, you can just take the spare fingers, pull it out to the ground, then put the other one in. And then rake the bolt on the gun wherever it is, on this side, or if it's the AR-15, the bolt will be on the back. And yes, I know it's called a charging handle, it's just faster for me to say bolt. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter how they set it up on the damn gun. The thing that I have to pull back to load a round into the chamber, to me, it's a bolt, alright? So calling it a charging handle to make it seem more elaborate doesn't mean shit to me. It's a fucking bolt, okay? Now, when bringing the new magazine over to the gun, here's what I recommend doing. Where the sling is, make sure this hand does not go under the sling. Bring it over the sling. Reason being is that if I go underneath the sling like this in order to perform that reload, now if someone, for whatever reason, was charging at me with a knife or baton or something like that at a really close distance, and let's just say they had a knife and they were coming at me this way with a downward stab or a psycho stab, there's many names for it, but basically it's with the blades aiming downwards and it's this stabbing motion. If I have to block that from here by hand first, because maybe the gun's aiming this way and I'm not able to get a clean angle on it immediately, I may have to block it like this, and if the sling's in the way, I don't want my arm getting caught up in it. So if I were to go over the sling here, then after I perform the reload, whichever way, like wherever the fucking bolt is, and had to block it the same way, well, now there's nothing obstructing the path of my arm. Same as if I have to block downwards. Yeah, okay, if I go underneath the sling from here and then have to block downwards, it won't get in the way. But here's the beauty of it. If I reload by going over the sling and then have to block something downwards, I can still block it, because if I go underneath it, the sling kind of meets my arm about halfway, so directly in the middle. Whereas if I go over and need to block something down below from here, it kind of maybe just nicks my fingertips a little bit, but that's about it. So it is much more effective to reload by going over where the sling is. Another tip I'll give you is that if you need to carry the weapon upwards like so, have the stock over the wrist like this, not tucked in this way. Reason being is that if you should, for whatever reason, need to quickly melee someone that's coming at you, it's easier to do it this way here as opposed to if it's tucked underneath like that, where it'll probably be your forearm that'll hit them before the stock. And a stock is much more of a devastating strike than coming in just with my forearm, so I'd rather have that be the first thing that hits them. Other advantages of having it over here is that also if I need to put in a muzzle strike, it's easier this way, or even if I just need to push them off me this way here, it's also much more effective. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, such as the revolver videos or the ones I had on pistols, I talk a lot about the importance of learning to clear malfunctions quickly. And of course with shotguns, assault rifles, submachine guns, it's no different. The issue is that there's a lot of more kind of different designs out there when it comes to, you know, the two-handed type of guns. Something like revolvers, regardless of what brand makes them, that's kind of like the same technique for clearing those malfunctions, the same as semi-automatic handguns. Doesn't matter if they're striker fire or hammer fired, it's, like I said, a tap and rack is kind of like the thing that'll clear all of them. And so when it comes to more rare jams and malfunctions when it comes to assault rifles and submachine guns, Like, it's a completely different way to clear it if it's an M16 compared to an AK-47. And so I can't really demonstrate that stuff with shitty toy guns. Thank you, Australia. And so for the purpose of education, I will outsource the information like I sometimes do by putting links in the description of this video that you can check out. So I'll put in something from Polymer Tactical where they talk about clearing AK-47 jams and stuff like that. But keep in mind, the techniques I show aren't just random techniques that I look for on YouTube. These are the techniques that I actually will use. So there are different kind of ones that people use, but the ones that I'm putting in the description of this video are the ones that I would be showing. So please check them out and practice those techniques if you have one of the guns in question. Or just practice it anyway, it's good information to know. So when it comes to one-point slings, this is sort of what they look like. Anyway, on one of my older backpacks, I cut off some of the straps and the clips in the front of it because they were pissing me off and didn't actually benefit me in any way. And so I've taken one of those off here in order to kind of demonstrate this. As far as the points on these one-pointed slings that connect from here down to the part of the stock, they can be a bit longer than this, but this is the setup that I'm just working with now. Alright, clip that back in. And same principles also apply. This is just kind of like a large-ass necklace that fits around. But again, if you're right-handed, then this part should go under the left side shoulder, and vice versa, yada yada. When using a single-pointed sling, a lot of the principles are still kind of the same when it came to the two-pointed sling. Some are a little bit different. I mean, for example, the ones that are the same as shoulder transitions still do that the same way when it comes to having the sling on and not removing it. If I do have to remove it, some type of one-point slings you can still then just take the the gun off like so, but not really with this one. And so, what some other people done that I've seen is that they'll take this one here and they'll grab it like that and then move it over because they're kind of mimicking using that same hand as a two-pointed sling and moving it over. The problem with that, though, is that I've taken my hand off the trigger. So from here I wouldn't be opposed to taking the other hand like this and just bringing it over like so. Another advantage of having a one-pointed sling is that when performing those reloads, the sling doesn't get in the way because it's connected to the stock at both ends, as opposed to one being connected to the stock and the other one towards the front of the gun. So at the moment the sling's practically hugging me, so that's a pretty good advantage. One disadvantage, however, is that when transitioning from my primary gun, which would obviously be the two-pointed son of a bitch, to the pistol, is that it kind of, like, you really do need to assist it when moving it across the side like so, but again, they have a tendency to come back like that just based on the way that it's formed and positioned. And so, anyway, if I'm here, I really need to sort of like throw it around the side like that, but again, part of it will still have this tendency to want to move it around to the front here. Doesn't make that big of a deal if I'm standing still like so, but if I have it here and I need to move, like this, it'll tend to find its way back here. And if it's a really heavy gun, and you're a guy and you're not wearing a cup, then this could be a bit problematic if it comes back like so and hits you right in the groin. Okay, it's happened to a lot of people, yes, myself as well. I was wearing a cup, but based on the angle that it came on, I don't know what happened. I think it was like this part of the magazine that, as it came like so, say this here is my set of two twins, as it came down like that there, this magazine part hit like so. So even though I had a cup, it sort of moved it upwards, and because it was a steel cup, it almost weaponized it, and it still fucking hurt. Hey guys, welcome to the floor. I'm doing this down here so that you can see a bunch of unorthodox shooting positions on the ground. I would have filmed this outside, but there's too much bullshit that would be going on out there. There's a lot of noise. I wouldn't be able to get the microphone set up in just the right kind of way that I need it to. Plus, you know, we have dogs here, and so they'd be moving around knocking shit over. So unfortunately, this is where I have to do it. So anyway, if I'm in the prone position, which is where I am now, then I'll have the gun like this here in the combat position. Still, I'll have the stock underneath my my collarbone, but still pressed against my shoulder nonetheless. Now, I can't actually look down the sights from here with my opposite eye, so if I did need to look down them, well, now I would have no choice but to use the right eye and look down like this. If I have to get down really, really low, same principle applies. What I'll do now is I'll move my my head to the side, using the right eye to look down the sights as best I can. Okay, another shooting position, this one's referred to as the fetal position. So my legs are kind of tucked up a little bit like this. Understand that on this side of your body, if this is where you've kept your pouches with your spare magazines and stuff like that on there, they're probably going to be pushing against you. So it's normal, expect it, get over it. Alright, this is basically the only position you'll need to use from here. So, some people ask me, why couldn't you use the combat position from here? Well, theoretically you can. The point is of getting down low is to not be seen. So if I'm doing that and I have to keep this arm in line with it, well then I'm sticking it up a little bit and exposing it more. Plus, if I'm down like this here, then I would be in a situation where I could look over the sides. But if I'm getting down, trying to avoid being detected, well then from here, keeping this in mind. The reason of having both eyes open is to get lots of peripheral vision. So if I'm in this position here, what do you think like I need the peripheral vision for? Nothing's going to be coming up out of the ground to get me, although they'll be pretty freaky if it would, like the movie Screamers. Anyway, so you only need to be in the apogee position from here. And of course if you want to close an eye you can, because the only thing you're not going to be able to see is the ground, where threats can't merge out from anyway. Another position is this one. I just coined this one from a Simpsons episode, this one here called the American Taxpayer. And so this is where, if your gun's in the right hand but your body's on the other side, essentially yes, you can still be on this side here and shoot this way, keeping in mind that the extraction port being on this side of the gun, you want a bit of room for those rounds to, you know, go to where they need to go and not get caught up in coarse jams and shit like that. So if you need to place a hand on the ground like that just to ensure there's a gap, then that's another good idea. Also, if I'm up like this and on my knees and I need to aim down the sights like that, again, stock pulls into the shoulder and I look down the sights like this. You can have both eyes open or you can close an eye if the situation dictates it. Something else to consider as well is that if I need to be in this position, if I'm at a beach or in desert terrain somewhere where there's sand, what I might be able to do if I have the time, if the extraction port's going to be aimed downwards, is that I can scoop up a bunch of the sand and sort of throw it behind me. When doing this, don't fling it everywhere, because if there's wind blowing back in this direction, it's going to go all over you. And if one little bit of sand gets in your eye, it'll distract your vision. So do it hard and firm and just pull it out like that and just sort of like gently brush it to the side. Then when there's a deep enough gap, take the hand and put it in front of where you've made that hole. And then this way there's like a bit of an opening for those, for those rounds to fly out of. And by rounds I mean the spent shell casings. If I need to duck down for whatever reason, if the gun's in the close quarter, the combat, or the apogee position, all those are the same. The only thing that you really need to be mindful of is the positioning of the feet. Now, what I want to have is that, again, if I'm right-handed, the right leg of mine should be the one where the knee is touching the ground. The leg that's on the same side as the supporting arm should be the one that's like this. So essentially what I want to mimic like this is something like that. So think of it, if this knee and this elbow will touch, then you're doing it correctly. What it's incorrectly is this way here, but some people I guess like sitting this way because they think it's more comfortable or whatever like that, or because this might be their dominant leg, that's the one that they want to have forward or something. But here's the thing, if you need to lean around and cover, it is much more effective to do it this way. So if I need to shoot around the right side, I can do that from here. If I have to shoot around the left side, I can do that from here. If my legs are the other way around, it becomes really awkward now, and I'm putting a lot of strain on my supporting leg. Same as this way here. Yeah, it's a little bit easier this way, but this way not so much. So yeah, this is a much more preferred method. And of course, if I got knocked down on my ass and have to shoot this way, well, I have to learn how to do that. So again, those other positions are still the same. Even if I'm like this and I need to have the gun really close to me because someone's approaching me at this manner, well, I can still take out targets that way. I can be here and still take out targets this way. And I can be here and still take out targets this way. One thing which I'm not sure if you noticed or not, and pardon my feet by the way, it's too fucking hot for me to want to put on boots. But I don't bring my knees up like so. And so, essentially if I'm, here you go, close quarter movement, right? There you go. Now this, knees in the way, is blocking vision and such. So what I would rather do is just have them down like that, just angling them up just a little bit. And so now if I need to roll over this way and take out targets on this side, I can. If I have to roll the other side, use your imagination. Hi. Well, we're nearing the end of the video, and so I'll wrap this up with one other technique. You will need to remove the sling from you to perform this single-handed technique, however. The technique where it involves using two hands, it'll be optional depending on what kind of sling you have the setup, how long you've adjusted it to, and so on and so forth. So this is to be used when you're taking cover behind cover or enhanced concealment. Cover is something that'll stop bullets, concealment is something that just hides you from the bad guy. Enhanced concealment is something that'll also hide you from the bad guy, but will stop some bullets but not all of them. So for example, the engine block of a car. That'll typically stop some pistol rounds, but most rifle rounds will go through it. And so let's just say that the bed here right now is the bonnet of a car, and I'm taking cover behind where obviously the engine would be. Yeah, I know that cars would have this up higher, so use your imagination. The only time I would be taking refuge, let's call it, I'm not even going to say cover, refuge behind the engine block of a car is if I have no choice. But if I have a gun and are able to fire back at whatever threat's shooting me, then I want to get away from there as quickly as I can. So let's just say point A, B, C. So point A is where I'm currently at, point C is where the proper cover is at, between that B is where the car is at, so I might need to run there and just take refuge behind there to fire a couple of rounds back with the threat before I make my way to where I need to get to. And so this single-handed technique you can use on something like a very large log or a boulder, stone wall, something like that, but it involves you getting low and taking cover to the extent where if you say that my hand here is the cover, I look up like that, so it's just my eye looking above it. So in this sense, I'll take the rifle and put it this way with the extraction port aiming upwards, but I'll angle back a little bit to about here. Let me adjust the camera for a minute. So what I'll do now is angle back slightly, and what you want to do is keep the rifle onto where the cover is, making sure that the magazine part, if you were to turn the rifle, the magazine won't get snagged on the surface of that cover. And so I'll have it here, still making sure the extraction point is aiming upwards, but for whatever reason, if I wasn't able to do that and had to shoot the other way around, if I angle it this way, then the extraction point won't be obscured by the surface of said cover or enhanced concealment. So anyway, in this sense here, if I'm angling down like that, what I'll do is I'll get myself back and I'll use the top eye to look down the sights and then take the shots I need to do. Same thing in reverse. Okay, this next technique involves shooting over cover while I'm on the move. It doesn't matter if I'm crouching like this and have to move or if I'm standing up, but basically for whatever reason I need to shoot over cover. What you do is you have your hands in the same position as if you're in the close quarter position. But now what you do is you move your arms all the way above your head like so, making sure that the side is in line with the right side eye. So if it's in the right-handed side position, then the sight should be above the right hand eye. And again, keep using that isometric pressure. So as I move across, I'm shooting over the targets as to where I need to go. Understand, however, that the situations in which this would be acceptable to do would be, I guess, maybe more of a military kind of setting. This does tend to violate to some degree that principle of being sure of your target and what's beyond it. So if you were in a civilian-like area, this wouldn't be the most applicable technique because you may hit an innocent bystander. However, if you're, in a military setting where the only thing in this particular area that's like in front of you would be only enemy threats, then that would be considered an acceptable technique. But again, understand your situation as to where these techniques apply to. The situation will always determine what type of techniques needed to be applied. Well, this concludes the video. Thank you for tuning in and making it this far. And again, I'm really sorry that I couldn't make a better video using real firearms and stuff like that, but places in which I can go that would involve me using real firearms, filming and stuff like that's heavily restricted, and unfortunately when it comes to here in Australia, the Australian government have this thing against wanting their citizens to be armed and have the ability to protect themselves, so what can I do? But again, no one else on YouTube is stepping up to explain these SMGs relock techniques, and so that's why I'm here. But if someone else was doing it and using real guns and had better setup and stuff like that, well then I wouldn't be doing this. So anyway, I have to do what I can with the crappy kind of props and toy guns and stuff that I can. So anyway, hopefully it didn't suck entirely. Someday I'll make it to Texas. All in all, thank you for tuning in, and stay safe. People keep asking me if I'm going to make more videos, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back!